Well, all right, let's get on with today's show. Our guest today is a friend of mine that I met in Salt Lake City in 2019. His name is Earl Foote, and Earl is the CEO and cybersecurity expert at Nexus IT Consultants. They're regarded as one of the nation's top managed service security providers, and we had a great time catching up with Earl. He was so gracious to share his life and business experiences with us. So let's welcome Earl Foote to the Metanoia Rethink Everything Podcast.
Hey, Jim. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, man. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and to share your life. And man, it was just so good to meet you in my time in Salt Lake City. We had a ton of fun, and you were gracious enough to let me come to a few of your events. I'll share a fun story with you. You got me addicted to crepes. So Dolly's Crepes. And so when I came down to Tucson, I went to the mall, and lo and behold, there was a crepe store in the mall and in Tucson Mall. And I began to share the story with them. I said, I've got this friend in cybersecurity. I said, and he puts on just the best spread for his events. And I said, he always brings in a guy that has crepes. And I shared the story, and it turns out he had a similar story. A guy from the Middle East came to Tucson to go to school. There were no crepes, hence he starts a store. So it was
interesting.
Yeah.
So I know we miss you around here, Jim, and but Dolly actually has a brick and mortar, crepe shop now, not just doing catering. And I'll tell you, you can't even get a table in that place. He is jamming busy all the time. He's a smash hit, and now he's looking for 2 more locations. So he's doing fantastic. And of course, his crepes are, that's out of this world.
It's a great story, but I think it also speaks volumes about you. I know that one of the first times that we connected was over a post that you had on LinkedIn about abundance mentality. And this is something that I guess around 2000, it hit me pretty hard about believing in other people's success. And, my story in Salt Lake was taking that philosophy to a very small company called ClearLink. And then in sharing my resources with them, and then allowing them to use those resources, and they used them and grew their company to an amazing exit. And I was able to play a vital role in the early days of that growth. And you bringing in, you have that same mentality, and you like to bring in local business leaders and people needing help, need exposure, and man, just kudos to you for believing in other people's success and having abundance mentality. Can you share with me a little bit about kind of how you got to that point?
Yeah, for sure. And I really appreciate that. And I certainly can't lay claim to Dolly's success. You have to have a good product or service, of course, and you have to be a good entrepreneur to ultimately find success. But, I don't think that it's something that necessarily I developed. I think it's more something innate to me, and probably has something to do with my upbringing. It wasn't necessarily discussed in the specific terms of an abundance mindset. The traits, I think, were things that I just learned from patterning after my parents. They definitely live an abundant life. That they're just very supportive of people around them and community. And in the end, I think that I see so many people in the business arena that are really kind of catty, and that they feel like if anybody else has success, that they're being held down, or if they help anybody else have success, it's only going to be detrimental to them. And for me, that it just doesn't. It's not the case, and it doesn't resonate. Like there's plenty of goodness to go around in this world, and we should all participate in it. And the reality is, part of being successful in business, for me anyway, has most definitely been about building and supporting community. And, the more that you are supportive of those around you, other leaders and entrepreneurs and startups, sometimes, and we're not a massive company, Jim, but we do reasonably well. And, we're 22 years in, and sometimes I mix and mingle with brand new startups and, entrepreneurs that are just barely starting their journey. And I get comments here and there of like, why are you wasting your time with that? And I'm like, wasting my time? What? I don't understand what you're talking about. This is a good individual. They've got a good project. I like them as a person, and I feel like what they're trying to do is important. And so I'm 100% about what can I do to help you, on your journey. Now, we all have limited bandwidth and resources, so you can only go so far. But if it's within my capabilities to have a positive impact, and look, that's part of my life mission anyways, just to have a positive impact on those around me. And so if I can have a positive impact, on what somebody else is doing that resonates with me, then 100%, I'm gonna see if I can support them.
Yeah, one of my personal goals is to play a role in the success of other companies and other businesses. And I like being able to, I've always felt like I had somebody share with me one time that we have a responsibility to, let the others coming next stand on our shoulders. And the things that we've learned to share with that next generation. And I like what you said about, having that abundant mindset was just natural to you. I know for me, I was one of those that for years felt that way. Felt like, well, gosh, I can't really support a competitor. And it turns out the greatest success I ever had in business was truly predicated on the success of a competitor. Yeah. And I was able to piggyback on the success of a competitor using a similar strategy. And that's been my biggest story. And we were able to use that with Clearlink. Can you walk us through a little bit of your background and tell us where you're from originally and kind of walk me through your childhood a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So you're asking me to dig, 40, 45 years back in the past here, Let's see how well I remember. So I grew up in the very blue-collar town or neighborhood of West Valley City, Utah. If you've been there, Jim, you may have in your tenure here, but it's a very different place from when I grew up there. It was, very white picket fence, white bread, blue-collar neighborhood with lots of fields. It had been agriculture land that they were, of course, developers were building homes, throughout that area. And we had tons of just, fields and BMX bike tracks that we would build all over the place. And like we had swamps and tadpoles and frogs and snakes and everything,
That's
so
awesome.
Summers, we weren't even home. Like we were so excited in summer to just go out and play. And sometimes I feel sorry for our current generations and our kids because they really didn't experience life the way we did.
Yeah.
And they've been so overprotected. And I think technology, honestly, has ruined childhoods. And that's funny for a technologist to say, right? But
yeah.
For me, we didn't have anything to do with technology. I mean, video games barely came around, late in my teenage years, really. And our time was just like, we'd get up at 6 a.m. just to go hang out with our buddies, get on our bikes and go catch frogs all day long, the swamps or whatever. And, mom knew we wouldn't be home. We were supposed to be home by dinner time, which was usually like 6:30 when my dad would be home from work. And so we'd have to be home for dinner time. And then we'd go right back out after dinner. And we'd play kick the can or hide and seek until midnight, every summer. And it was just a very holistic kind of pure way to grow up. I relish those moments and those memories with those friends. And, I do feel bad for my own children. Like I tried to give them as much of that as I possibly could, and tried to shield them a little bit from too much screen time, too much technology, too much TV, but and actually, selectively chose homes that had some open spaces near them and stuff like that. So it would encourage them to get out and explore and have fun. But the generations just aren't the same anymore, Anyways, it was a great childhood, great family I grew up in, great neighborhoods and stuff, always very supportive, people around me growing up.
Yeah, I have a similar background. I grew up in rural Alabama, and I remember getting off the bus after school and go home, change clothes, get something to snack on, and then you're outside playing sports and running through the woods, as you mentioned, and riding bikes and jumping hills and on the bikes, and you played hard until dinner time, and that was you're right. It was kind of a lack of technology back then, and more about connection with your friends and with your neighbors. And I think now we fight hard for those connections. And one of the things that you've done that's really so admirable, most of the events that I was attending in Salt Lake, I kept seeing Earl Foote and Nexus IT. And I was like, man, this guy is doing a really, really good job of connecting with the local community. And I was so impressed by that. It was from LinkedIn local events and for Million Cups and all these things that as I've gotten here to Tucson and kind of reached out to people about these events, they have no concept of what's happening in such a wonderful place as Salt Lake City. Let me ask you this real quick. Tell me a little bit about where you went to school and kind of how you got your interest in technology.
Yeah, very good. For me, it was somewhat happenstance, honestly. I grew up actually very interested in art. I was pretty good, sketching, sketching stuff and painting. And, in my younger teens, I probably thought I was going to be an artist. And then I think, my parents probably talked to me about the difficulties of the artist lifestyle.
Right.
And I settled in on architecture. And I studied that in high school. I actually, I dual matriculated my junior and senior year in high school. So I went, to high school half day and then to university half day. And I was taking architecture, and computer-aided design classes and stuff like that. I started studying architecture and then fairly quickly landed a job out of high school that had advertised as an architectural firm. But once I got started there, it became apparent within a few weeks it was an engineering firm, not an architecture firm. And I took a liking to that, and I changed my studies in school, my majors, and I went after engineering instead of architecture. And honestly, it may have been a bit of a mistake for me because I really enjoyed the creative outlet side of architecture. And so I studied and graduated in engineering and worked in that field for several years, primarily while I was studying. And I really, at first I really liked it, and then I didn't really love it that much. It became kind of mundane, and I was sitting behind, the same desk all day long, calculating, the same numbers and working on the same drawings. And it just, it became a little mundane to me. And my brother had just graduated with a systems administration degree and some certifications from a local university. And I was a bit of a hobbyist at that point. This is my earliest 20s, 22, 23 years old. Okay. And I was a bit of a technology hobbyist at that point. I was already beginning to build computers and kind of set up little networks and that kind of stuff. And And so I decided to make a career shift, and I took all my brother's manuals from his courses and stuff. I was like, I just finished college. I'm not going to go back to college and,
Right.
and study again. It wasn't my intent, but I took all of his books and I studied through those, learned the basics of computer science and networking and that kind of stuff. And I went and took certifications and got some of my entry-level certifications. And, promptly there, my brother and I decided to go into business. In 1998, September of 98, we established, at the time, the business was called PC Nirvana. We rebranded in 2004 to, our current name, to Nexus IT. But, that's really kind of where it all got started. I just, I was intrigued I liked it. And certainly there was a lot of opportunity, and technology really was just kind of starting to take a stronghold in that mid to late 90s in corporate America, in businesses. Literally like in the late 90s, we were helping businesses, go through a complete digital transformation and get off of paper and manual processes and get onto computers, And so it was a very intriguing, interesting time to be in the industry. Of course, it has been for the past 22 years. This industry is ever evolving and ever challenging. I found a lot of interest there. I really, enjoyed it and decided to make a jump in my career and ultimately, start a business in it.
I've seen a lot of the skills for people, similar to you, and I kind of fall into that category with you in terms of your artistry, and I know you're a musician as well. And I've heard your band several times. I love you guys. You're great.
Thank you.
And that creativity that you have, and that the natural desire for problem solving is just it's just a perfect fit for entrepreneurship. And taking those early, tell me about the early days of PC Nirvana and kind of how you got started. Because I'm sure you're probably like me. You bootstrap things, and you had to pivot a few times. Tell me about those early pivots that you made with PC Nirvana.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, those early years, we were just trying to figure some things out, and I think over an entire trajectory, you're never really out of that process. You're always fine tuning and figuring out what works. And of course, the market changes and the world changes and technology changes, and you're always adjusting and pivoting. But originally, actually, my brother and I, so we had set up for a $500 investment. We'd set up this e-commerce, computer hardware, networking gear website that had. It was kind of progressive because it had direct APIs into all the major distributors. And so suddenly we had, for a $500 investment, we had a catalog of drop ship availability of hundreds of thousands of SKUs available on our website.
Wow.
And, this was the .com boom, and we thought we were just going to, be millionaires overnight. Right.
Right.
And, promptly and we knew nothing about web traffic or driving people to your website or how to actually, get sales in e-commerce or, fulfillment and customer service, none of that stuff. But of course we had some orders trickle in here and there, but there were, plenty of other websites out there where people were, procuring the same equipment, and we weren't anything special, nor did we have like a budget to go after, marketing and advertising and pay-per-click and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of translated really quickly, though, into a few businesses around town that wanted us to support their computers and their IT, which translated into some retail computer sales. And we dabbled in that for a while. We actually had a few different retail shops, where we would sell computers direct to the public. and of course, parts and support, all that stuff, while we were still doing, business to business services as well. And one thing that actually kind of came along in our early years, and it was really due to my artistic inclinations, and that is that I was kind of producing my own music digitally at that point, recording in a home recording studio and doing some audio video production. And so we're talking late 90s, early 2000s here. And you couldn't at that point really buy a computer off the shelf to just do those things.
Okay.
You had to have some pretty specialized systems, set up. And, of course, Mac was the big player back then, but there was a ton of new technology coming out in the PC space in like capture cards and rendering cards and, graphics cards, and then software, for audio and video production and all that kind of stuff. And we developed this niche where we started building turnkey audio video production systems and studios, and we would actually ship those nationwide. And sometimes we would ship them even internationally. And anyway, so that market kind of blossomed for us, fairly quickly, and that was a lot of fun. Again, it was, applying more of the artistic side for a little while. And, but, like by mid 2000s, that market sort of dried up because you could start just buying, any computer off the shelf. We had actually, come up with our own version of a hacked Windows 98, which, we'd done all these registry hacks and stuff to thin the operating system way down.
Okay.
So that it would run super efficiently and effectively and, work really well for audio and video. And, by mid 2000s, you could buy pretty much any computer off the shelf and set it up in your home, for the same purposes or in a studio. Right. So
right.
That market kind of dried up for us. And that was, really where we kind of made the decision of we're going to, shift our focus, no more retail. While we still did a lot of e-commerce actually through 2017, is when we actually did away with our e-commerce division and practice. But, we shifted our focus in 2004, 100% business to business. We rebranded from PC Nirvana to Nexus IT Consultants. And, we've been in that business to business. And then subsequently along the way, we've made pivots into cybersecurity and into cloud, into compliance, into needed, pieces and components that are part of our industry. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, man.
Yeah, I know. It's because it's kind of funny as you're talking, you were answering my next question because I wanted to talk about your first big success and then your value proposition and your niche. And it was perfect. I mean, and it's kind of funny, I've always heard this phrase, there's riches in the niches. And and it kind of runs true, but there's also a season. You enjoy the highs and prepare for the lows. And it's interesting to see how you've pivoted each time that you need to, and you paid attention to the market as opposed to. I see a lot of approaches where companies they build it thinking someone's going to come, and you end up with either a whole lot of inventory because you missed the market, but you were following the trends and you were following the customers and you were following the need and continuing to problem solve. I see that as a continuous marker for success. In entrepreneurs that have that ability and are willing to make that change and not get stuck in old venues and understand that, technology just changes so quickly. One of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit was when you made the last pivot over to, say, for instance, when you added cyber. I know cyber for me became a big interest point while I was in Salt Lake, and we kind of bonded a little bit over some cyber conversations. And what do you think is the resistance in the market to cyber adoption for companies?
I think the biggest thing that we run across, the biggest struggle, is for senior leadership, senior executives outside of the technology executives to really understand the importance of a robust security posture, and wanting to even dispense a budget for that. So a lot of our points of contacts within our client organizations, for example, are CIOs or IT managers or directors of IT. And while they're making lots of recommendations, they're more often than not, they're vetoed by more senior leaders who just look at the bottom line and say, yeah, we're not going to do that. And of course, the consequences of that we see so often are very disastrous, right? I've always made a commitment to not be a fearmonger, when it comes to cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. But I will talk about the realities, and I do believe in educating the community about the realities. And the reality is that most businesses that don't take a realistic stance on cybersecurity, they're going to end up in a world of hurt. And that generally is going to have very significant financial consequences for them. Yeah. Ounce of what's that saying? Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. That generally rings true in cybersecurity, and I think that's there's a misunderstanding. For people outside of the technical industry, they don't necessarily, they're difficult concepts. They don't understand them very well. And then they just, and because of that, they generally make the wrong decision and don't decide to pull the trigger on budget when it comes to cyber spending.
Yeah, I've shared with some friends who have small businesses, and I said, in my opinion, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You can put your head in the sand about it, and you can think, oh, it's not going to happen to me. But let's pretend that it happened and there was no mitigation in place. And culture, plays a big part of that as well. If you haven't instilled a culture in your business that says, okay, we need to be aware of the risks, and you get past that. What do you say to a client who has had an incident that you possibly had shared with before, because they probably called you and said, hey, you were right. We've had an incident. What's your response when you encountered that type of conversation?
I mean, the first thing is, and yes, you're right. We take very seriously our responsibility as, their IT partner and their cybersecurity partner to educate them. And we try not to do that in an overwhelming fashion, but make sure that they know what the risks are to them and their business. Oftentimes they choose not to take recommendations. Of course, budgets are a concern, and I get it. Like, you don't have limitless resources, right, to spend. So more often than not, when those conversations come about, we have had previous conversations. We've provided proposals, and decisions were made to not pull the trigger on solutions that would, help protect the organization and their data better. So for us, the first thing is to just make sure that they know that we're there to be a partner. We're there to help. And we don't throw things in their face. We don't say, we told you so. We let them know, we're here to help you navigate through this. It's going to be a difficult circumstance. We have all the resources, if we need to get cyber attorneys involved, if we need to get cyber insurance agents, if you've done that, if you've got enrolled in cyber insurance or whatever is necessary, we help put all of that, all of those things into play, to come to bear for them and to help them in the situation. Of course, remediation as quick as you can possibly do it is always our target, but you have to be careful enough to make sure that you are actually extracting hackers or cyber criminals from their networks and that they have no way back in. And we see oftentimes, in fact, one of the ways we procure a lot of new accounts is, competitors, clients who have had a cyber incident and are 2 or 3 or 4 weeks in and are still down or partially hacked and having problems. We're an organization who tries to, within 24 to 72 hours, make sure that our clients are back up if they have an incident. And then, of course, the clients who take this all seriously and engage for us to be proactive about their security posture, the likelihood that they're to have an incident is very minimal. It's not zero. In today's world, hacking is sometimes inevitable.
Yeah.
But their risk goes from an 80% chance to a 5% chance or something like that. And so it's just being a partner and helping them out, I think is our approach. If that answers your question, I hope so.
Yeah, it does. And it's difficult. It's great that you don't have that conversation in terms of, I told you so. Because I've always been a firm believer in not burning bridges, because at some point in time you may need to walk across that bridge again. But in terms of your overall business and your future growth, what obstacles do you think that we talked a little bit off podcast about expansion and whatnot, but what do you think are your obstacles to future growth and how you can overcome those?
Yeah, very good. So I would say this, as an entrepreneur, if you plan to be growth oriented, you should just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You're consistently out of your depth. I know I am. We are consistently year after year, month after month, quarter after quarter, growing our business to heights it's never been to before. And that usually means that everybody within the organization has to upskill, along the way, including yourself. You have knowledge and skill set gaps, right? And your team has knowledge and skill set gaps. And so you have to fill those. You have to educate yourselves. You have to, go to ongoing training and have good networks of mentors and peers that you can rely upon. And of course, you have to constantly be looking for new talent that can raise the bar within your organization, new partnerships that can raise the bar. So that's always, one of our biggest challenges. We've always taken the decision to be self-funded since day one. And that, of course, is its own challenge. We only can grow to the extent of our profits each year and the amount of money that we reinvest into the organization to create that growth. We've never gone and procured millions of dollars to scale at rapid pace. And so, capital is always a potential concern when you're growing, and particularly when you're growing quick. If you can burden the load of that growth or not, is a concern, and it's a real challenge. Whether or not we'll continue to be entirely self-funded, is up in the air. We often have conversations about that. To date, we have elected not to, bring in any outside sources of capital. But who knows what the future holds, per se. Yeah.
Totally agree there. One of the things I wanted to ask you on a personal basis, and it's a tough question, and it implies business, personal, and everything kind of affects your life. And as an entrepreneur, it's not something you turn off when you go home. A lot of times it's difficult to say, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm not going to have business on my mind. One of my constant battles is my fight for personal peace, where I am able to put things in business in my peripheral and to kind of focus on self and, like you said, continue to develop yourself. But how do you measure success for Earl Foote?
Yeah, very, very good. This is a challenging question for me, honestly, Jim. And same experience as you. 22 years in, I still have a really hard time trying to figure out the right balance. And sometimes that's not fair to the other, to the people in your life, right? Sometimes it's, your spouse or your kids who suffer the consequences of your around the clock work ethic. And, the fact that you're kind of on call 24/7, 365. And even when you go on vacation, you're dealing with that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think over the years, at specific moments in our history, I've had the luxury to not be quite as engaged. But then there's moments like right now where our growth is off the charts and you just have to dig your hands back in. And, I'm back to working 12 and 16-hour days, oftentimes because that's just what has to happen. But ultimately, that's not really answering your question. You asked about success. And for me, I think success is a very personal concept. I don't think that success has to be a specific picture that we seem to have in society in our minds about success. Means you have, 10 houses on the hill with 18 Ferraris in each house, and you're jet setting around the world, whatever
right.
that be. I think that for each of us, you kind of have to just decide upon what success is to you and what sacrifices you're willing to make in your personal life to get there or to not get there. The other big challenge for me here, honestly, is over a 22-year entrepreneurial career, we've had a significant amount of milestones, and some of them massive. And I'm really bad at slowing down and saying, oh my gosh, I never thought we would get there, and we just got there, right? And really taking the time to relish those moments and to celebrate them. For me, it's usually like, cool, nice win. We did a great job. Let's get back to work. Let's get to the next level, right? And I don't know, you get this insatiable desire to just keep pushing. And I do, and I wish that, it's something that I'm working on changing, and specifically in our culture, making sure that we are relishing those moments. We've had a lot of them in recent years. And, I'm working hard personally and within our culture to try to make sure that we slow down enough to really enjoy the accomplishments, the milestones, the big wins, and that kind of stuff.
One of the things that you're doing that I'm trying to do as well is make a difference in other people's lives, and create a quality of life for the people around you, where they can share in the victories, because solo victories, as you know, just become so idle. And it's only a great shared success what you've been able to accomplish with your team. One thing I've learned is the older I get, the less I need. And I really enjoy, and I've seen that in you as well, in your abundance mindset, and as you've been able to, while for yourself, you're happy with the minimal, and you have great joy in watching your team members succeed and to reach levels of success that they probably didn't know they had, but because you had walked that journey before, and you were able to mentor and to share your stories and be open about sharing your story, you're actually seeding into that success of so many other people that are coming behind you, that are with your team, and believing in the success of others, and kudos for doing that, because there aren't a lot of people with your abundant mindset that have that belief that, okay, you know what, I'm going to buy into somebody else's success and bring them into my team and grow them for their future. And so, man, I really appreciate you and your ability to do that.
I appreciate that kindness and that observation. It's certainly something that I strive for. I won't ever pretend to be perfect at anything, but yeah, you know, the older I get like you, the more of a minimalist I become. The less I want stuff, and the less I want my stuff to own me.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I want things more simple and easy, and certainly, you know, helping other people, including our team, to reach new heights. You know, that's very much a part of our culture, and certainly it comes from, you know, personal core values that myself and leadership and really, you know, every person that we look for in this organization, those are things that are important to them, because we want those to be, you know, very much a live part of our culture here.
Well, listen, we've run out of time today, but I want to have you back on the podcast in the near future. And man, thanks for taking the time to chat with me and to share your life and affect the lives of other people in such a positive way.
Jim, I really appreciate this. You know, it's good to reconnect with you, my friend. And yeah, I'd love to come back on. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking the time to delve a little deeper into my unextraordinary life.
Well, I think it's quite extraordinary, but hang on. I want to talk to you off podcast, but we're going to sign off now. And thank you so much, Earl, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.